Hey everyone, Javed here. This video is a walkthrough of the Experimentation Audit Checklist, the 16 critical areas I look at when assessing how fast and safely a team can ship trustworthy experiments. We'll go section by section from identity and bucketing to tracking, QA, monitoring, and infrastructure. If you're looking for a deeper step-by-step breakdown of each part of the experimentation lifecycle, you can come into the Delivering Growth classroom, go to Product Experimentation 101, and there's an entire course in here on all the various steps of launching experiments. But the checklist is in guides, and so if you come into the guides and resources, you'll see here Experimentation Audit Checklist, and you can scroll through and see that we talk about assignment, tracking and analytics, QA, monitoring, and tooling and infrastructure. So I'm just going to quickly run through each of these and give you a little bit of background on what they are. So the first one is unified identity. So one of the first things I check for when whether a team has one of the first things I check for is whether a team has a unified identity system. So if your users get a new anonymous ID on every platform, web, mobile, backend, whatever platforms you're using, your assignment logic can break. So the same users get counted multiple times. That messes with your variation exposure, your MAU-based billing if you're using tools like Optimizely, and your ability to stitch together a clean user journey. So you need to make sure that every user has a consistent experiment ID and that follows them across platforms and sessions. So the next item is deterministic assignment. Your bucketing logic should be deterministic, meaning that the same user always gets the same bucket. That sounds obvious, but I've seen systems where that was inconsistent because sometimes we just use the ID, sometimes we use ID plus different attributes, and if those attributes don't always align, then you might get assigned to different variants of the experiment. So just be cautious. Make sure you're bucketing on the right ID and with the right attributes. The next item is mutually exclusive testing. If you're running multiple experiments at once, you need to make sure they aren't interfering with each other. If you intend for them to run at the same time, I'll talk about that in a second, but that means checking, so mutually exclusive means you're checking that they're either intentionally isolated or siloed from one another, or you're maybe using a partial holdout or a mutual exclusion group, and they're designed to overlap in a controlled way. Without this, you get interaction effects, which we'll talk about down below. Holdout integrity is essential for measuring long-term lift. So many teams define them loosely or forget to enforce them at all. A holdout isn't just users who didn't get the variant. It's a strategically carved out group that doesn't get any experimentation in a domain, so you can compare long-term metrics like retention and revenue. So it's really important to use holdout groups if you want to be able to measure your total impact of your experiments. Now let's jump into tracking and analytics, exposure logging, or analytics tracking. If your experiment fires without logging exposure, your analysis is basically toast. One of the first things I check is whether exposure events are reliably logged across platforms and whether they are tied to the actual flag assignment. So just making sure that if a user receives a certain variant, they're getting tracked against that variant and that we're demarcating the start and conversion of the experiments in consistent ways across variants and across the whole experiment. Metric truth is basically ensuring that all your metrics are defined clearly and that they reflect that they actually reflect actual product behavior. And you'd just be surprised at how often the primary metric is either misaligned with the product goal or implemented inconsistently. So it's really important to get that right. Session stitching is many experiments involve multiple steps. A user clicks and they come back and they convert later. If your session tracking is off, timestamps, user IDs, deduping, then you lose the ability to attribute those actions properly. So session stitching is all about making sure that you can stitch the right sessions together and be able to debug and understand how things are working in your analytics. Pre-launch QA, before the experiment goes live, I really expect to see a formal QA checklist, one that covers things like flag behavior, tracking events, eligibility, criteria and logic, variant, rendering the actual functional part of the experiment. And this isn't just a did the UI change? It includes all kinds of things like did we log exposure? What happens when we flip on and off the experiment for a user that's mid-experiment or mid-funnel? Did we hit all the expected metrics? Is ramping configured correctly? So there's a lot to testing experiments above and beyond just functional testing. QA coverage, whoever owns QA, engineering team, QA team, growth team, whoever it is, all three. But I definitely want to see how broad the coverage is, and do you use and how are you actually actually testing the experiments? Are you using synthetic testing? Are you testing in the QA environment? Are you rolling out to production and doing test and prod? Are you testing across platforms? Are you validating assignment logic on the edge? So all kinds of stuff that you want to check for. Concurrent experiments, this one really does trip everyone up. If you're running multiple tests, and you need to know how they overlap with one another functionally, but also there's a part of it that is related to interaction effects. So if you have variants from different experiments, they may interact with each other in an adverse way if you're not expecting it. So you need to be able to test for that. And we actually have, if you go back up to the classroom, we have a whole, in the guides and resources, we have a whole detecting interaction effects and A/B test Google Colab notebook that you can use to detect interaction effects. So going back to the checklist, then we have so we talked about concurrent experiments, then monitoring and debugging. We have live variant monitoring. So once you launch, you should be able to see in real time what % of users are in each variant. So you need dashboard setup. You want to see if the assignment matches the flag configuration. Are different devices or different types of, like mobile and web, are they showing the same distribution? Are control and variant actually equal? If you're doing staged rollouts or ramping, you need to validate that the users are being bucketed correctly. So all kinds of things that you want to monitor for in real time. And then to build on top of that, you want to set up alerting for anomalies. So monitoring is reactive, alerting is proactive. I always check whether the team has automatic push alerts for key anomalies like sudden drops in conversion, traffic imbalances, missing exposure events, sample ratio mismatch. So all those things you want to set up alerts for if you can. Your variant debug tools, that this is really important just to make sure that your engineers and analysts easily inspect and see what's going on with a particular experiment and for a particular user. Can they replay the experience, check the logs, toggle flags locally? If not, your ability to debug issues slows down significantly, so you need to be able to have the right tools and debugging capabilities set up before you launch. Flag hygiene, so jumping into tooling and infrastructure, and really part of implementation is your flagging logic inside of the code needs to be clean. This is one of the challenges. If you don't clean up old experiments, you start getting really nested and nasty flagging inside of the code. So you really do need to either productize or clean up or remove old feature flags from old experiments if those experiments are no longer valid. So bad hygiene just leads to technical debt, inconsistent behavior, failed rollbacks. So you look at your flag config, look at the code, make sure your deletion policy is solid. And then last one, a single source of truth. So finally, I try to check whether the team has a shared source of truth for experiments. Where does everybody collaborate? PMs, engineers, analysts. Where do they go and see what's running, what's done, what's working? It could be a dashboard, a Notion doc, an experimentation service you've built, whatever it is, but having that centralized visibility is super important. So that's the checklist, 16 areas that honestly quietly make or break your experimentation program. These are basically the checks that I use when I go and do an audit with a company, and in my consulting engagements. They're designed to help growth and engineering teams and data and QA teams to move faster without compromising accuracy or trust. If you want the checklist, come to school.com/delivering-growth-free. If you're not already on here, check it out. It's in the classroom. And then if you go in the classroom, there's also another course here called Auditing Your Experimentation Setup, which is actually the checklist, but it goes much more in depth into each one and talks about each item. So unified identity, I talk quite a bit about like what does that mean? How do you check for it? Deterministic assignment, go through and talk about it in detail. So you can not only get the checklist and this video is a resource, but also I have a lot more detail here in this actual course called Auditing Your Experimentation Setup. So check that out. If you want to learn how this all fits into the overall experimentation process, there's this Product Experimentation 101 course. Check that out. Free guides and resources. If you have any questions about how to apply this to the team, you can always post in the community, or you can, there's some links in here where you can book a call with me. I'm glad to jump in and see how I can help. So let's build better experiments together. Thank you so much for watching.